This is a one-shot comic with Ars, the god of war, that has an interesting concept. It is an art school, black and white anthology book with 4 stories featuring the Marvel character Ars. It's not something you see every day, and for the most part I would consider this to be an experiment that worked. This is, however, going to be a review I struggle with, because there isn't an enormous amount to the plots beyond the initial descriptions I provide. Here are our credits for the 4 tales. The second one is the best one, if you ask me. Our first story is set in the early 90s, shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we have some Soviets in East Germany who steal a super mega doomsday weapon, and so they are being pursued by the army and such, but then they are saved by Ars, who acts up their pursuers with his axe. And the overall premise here is that Ars is like their guardian angel. We shall not be discussing the parody adverts, because they are not worth any discussion. So Ars, he kills any and all who attempt to stop the pair of traitors. And that is the bulk of this story. And I do think that this, and all the stories, this entire comic, it is a clever use of Ars. I think they could have possibly squeezed an entire mini-series out of this basic setup of an anthology title with stories related to this C-list Marvel character who lends himself to a wide variety of narratives and time periods. The art for this one is by the new Invader As guy, the artist of that, the one who saw one of me reviews. He does this art. We eventually get to the more interesting part of this, which is the 2 soldiers. They are counting their blessings and thinking that they are lucky to have the aid of this mysterious stranger who seems invincible and who is protecting them. But it quickly turns to debate about why he is doing it. We as readers likely made the connection immediately. Honestly, the minute that Ars showed up, I knew exactly why he was fighting for them. And that is because he is the god of war, and he wants them to succeed at stealing this weapon and selling it to the highest bidder, since that will bring about a bigger war, and Ars revels in war. If I add a criticism, it's that this is a neat idea for a story, but the ending is weak. No proper resolution here. The twist that I already knew is the ending. Bit underwhelming, but shy of actually having the 2 of them bombed to death. I'm not sure where you can go with this cautionary tale. 3 of the 4 stories are cautionary tales. They are fairly authentic to the sort of EC anthology comic stuff. This second one, Ars has been imprisoned by a king back in the Arden days of Conan the Barber and sorcerers. And the king says he will let Ars go if he kills a wizard who has kidnapped the king's daughter. I actually won't spoil the other stories. They are a bit of a novelty, but they are somewhat different. Ironically, it took him dying, but this is the most purposeful use of Ars since Michael Bryan Benson adopted them. I like or want to like the character, but he was just shamelessly claimed by Michael Bryan Benson, who then did absolutely nothing with the guy until it came time for him to kill him off for a shock. I am glad to see that people like that, people like Michael Bryan Benson, they are not the ones writing stories in this. Instead, we have genre pieces by people who presumably understand the genre that this is aping. There is also the slightly clever aspect of publishing this, which was, as I said, Ars died before this came out. He was torn in half very graphically. But people went into that Michael Bryan Benson Dark Avengers crossover story, assuming that Ars would live because Marvel had already announced this one shot. And they did something interesting with it, but it likely was only given the green light to try and stop people from noticing that Michael Bryan Benson is going to kill off the one character he never wrote a single story arc for. So then, the third story is the worst. It is set in Iraq, and it turns out Ars is there, and Ars, he fights a monster of myth. Not much to it beyond that. Calling it a story is generous, but to make up for the lack of words in this one, the final one is a text piece which took fucking ages to read. This is a story about a coward, and in the end, the stranger who he met was Ars. The worst thing about it is that the third and final page, it is printed on the inside of the back cover, and that really fucking bothers me a lot. I think this was a worthwhile experiment, but other than the second story, I feel all of them didn't quite live up to their potential. The first one isn't bad, it's just the ending. I wanted a more concrete ending or realisation, rather than the ending being the thing I already assumed. If this looks like something you would like, or you are intrigued by it, I would say check it out. I like that this exists. It's neat to see something different, but also something that is still canon to the Marvel Universe. I think this deserves a 7 thumbs up for effort.